Welcome to your tutorial on how to use direct quotation in your AP essay. On the rubric, we have a whole section for evidence and commentary, and in order to score high on the AP Prose essay, you really need to have directly quoted evidence. So this little tutorial will show you some examples of how you can effectively and smoothly integrate textual evidence into your essay. There are 3 rules that we are going to go over. This may be a review from last year for some of you. The first rule is no orphan quotes, meaning we never let a quote stand alone. Your quote should not be its own sentence. You should always have something that leads into your quote so that it's not choppy, interrupts the flow of your essay, so that the context is given for what your evidence is, and so that you continue to have strong commentary. If you just kind of drop a quote in all by itself, it may lead you to a lack of explanation, which could lower your score for commentary. So here are 3 different ways that you could use the quote, "Our true nationality is mankind." If you just drop the quote in, like the red example on top, we have no idea what you're talking about. Only the quote speaks for itself. I don't know who said it. I don't know what the context is. I don't know what's going on. So the 3 examples below are different ways that would be more effective. The first one writes directly into the quote with an argument really about what the quote says. Let us cease building walls, for our true nationality is mankind. So you notice that the quote just runs directly into that. There's no comma setting it up because I chose words that would fit directly with that. So that's super smooth. And I understand that I'm using our true nationality as mankind as evidence for why we shouldn't build walls. The second piece shows who stated the quote, H.G. Wells, which gives some context, and then sets up the quote with a comma. So H.G. Wells illustrates the kind of unity our country needs today with his famous words, our true nationality is mankind. Notice where the periods are placed at the end of the quotation. They're placed inside. Notice that the comma sets it up this time because it's not running directly into the quote. Finally, human rights activists believe that our true nationality is mankind. There's one more example of how you would run your quote into your own words. All right, rule number 2. This makes rule number 1 a lot easier. We should use quote bits, not the entire quotation. Especially if you have a large chunk of textual evidence, you only want to use the part you really need. So if you think back to our first boot camp essay with the street, there were large chunks of evidence for imagery and large chunks of evidence for personification. If you use the whole chunk, it's not as descriptive. You are going to probably lose your reader if they're starting to read like 3 lines of text. The focus gets off of analysis and onto evidence. And that might lead you to not fully explaining your commentary and scoring lower. So instead, what you want to do is look for the part of the large chunk of text that you actually need. So you don't need all the ands and the ofs and thes. Maybe you just need the actual image here, here, and here. You might have 3 images within one chunk of text and you just pull those images out. Let me show you an example using the essay that we wrote in class this week. This is from Northanger Abbey. Here's a large chunk of text that characterizes physically Catherine Morland. She had a thin, awkward figure, a sallow skin without color, dark lank hair, and strong features. So much for her person, and not less unpropitious for heroism seemed her mind. So that's 3 lines of text. And it kind of can lose you, especially when you get to the unpropitious for heroism seemed her mind. So depending on how I want to characterize Catherine, I will choose different quote bits from this large passage. Here's one example. Catherine's physical appearance, comma, thin, awkward figure, end quote, comma, colorless skin, comma. There, see how I paraphrased? Dark lank hair, comma, and strong features do not call to mind the picture of a beautiful heroine. So I wanted to focus on beauty, and that usually in literature, the heroine is this beautiful woman. And Catherine is not described as a beautiful woman, so that's pretty ironic. And so I pulled out the things that were not beautiful about her. Notice in quotations that the comma comes after the quotation marks because it's a series and those words stay together. If I wanted to focus on her strength as a heroine, I would choose different quotes. So usually heroines in literature are not only beautiful, but strong. So if I wanted to focus on the fact that she's not strong and how ironic that is, I could use these quote bits. Catherine's thin, awkward figure and sallow skin lead the reader to believe that she is a sickly girl, not a strong heroine. Notice how in both of these examples, I'm already getting to commentary with the quotes. If I just drop the quote in, no orphan quotes, rule number 1, it would take me a while to explain every single thing that I put in there, and I probably wouldn't want to explain every single thing in that big, long quote anyway. So I suggest that you use quote bits from now on, and that you try to weave in some commentary that you would further explain later. So this is just the evidence part, and now you're going to explain and connect and talk about the irony, and that will lead you to a deeper analysis. Finally, rule number 3, citing our quotes. Now, in an AP timed right situation, you will not get marked down for not citing your quotes at all because it is graded as a draft. But when we do process papers and when you take one of these boot camp essays and you make it into a college level paper at the end of boot camp, you will need to cite for sure. So I always suggest that you do it anyway, so that if a reader is trying to figure out where your quote came from, they can find it right away. So for literature, you will be either giving a page number if it's a novel, a line number if it's a prompt or a poetry passage, or author citations for texts that you use in your analysis. So the reason we do this is to show where the line is in the piece or to give credit to other sources. We won't be doing the give credit to other sources until we do our research paper. Examples. Types of citation for analysis. Line number is what we are focusing on right now. All AP prompts have line numbers, but for your Miss Brill essay, which is a short story and not an AP prompt, for at home this time, you will not have line numbers, so you can use page numbers. You can just number those pages. Poetry, we always count the line numbers, and lyrics, same thing, we count the line numbers. If you're in a novel or a short story that doesn't have line numbers, you use page number, and if you're in a play, you use act, period, scene, period, and line, period. So let's just look right here at how we format this for multiple pages or lines. You most likely will have multiple lines. So if you have a quote bit that's just on one line, it's just the number. You don't put line number in parentheses, you just put number. Same thing here. If you have 2 consecutive lines, you use a comma. This is MLA format, 24, 25. And if you have 3, 24 through hyphen 27. So you never write any words inside the parentheses. It's just the number, and you don't put a number sign or anything like that. But again, should you mess this up on an AP timed right, nobody is going to care. It is only a draft. So finally, the overarching rule for using quoted evidence in your essay. As long as you know where you got the quote, you're safe in a timed right. It doesn't really matter if you write the information into a sentence or put in a citation. So you could even say something like, in line number 7 of the prompt, comma, Austin says this. You could do that. It's just not as well written. It seems kind of awkward, but you're never going to be attacked for doing something like that. So in review, rule number 1, never let a quote stand alone. You have to write around it. Rule number 2, use quote bits. That way you can avoid losing your reader and you can get further into your analysis. And rule number 3, cite your quotes in a longer essay so that you can show where the piece comes from that you pulled, and you can give credit to other sources. I hope you will practice all of these things in your next bootcamp essay and all the essays following.